Action. I don't know if you can hear that, but the person in the apartment above me is playing piano. I mean, it's lovely piano, but it's not very conducive to making a tech review today. I hope the camera is not picking it up. The two issues I have with action cameras are, number one, is that you can't zoom in to take those narrow shots. This camera, the Insta360 Ace Pro, fixes that problem. You've got a 2x zoom in 4K where you don't lose any quality. How does it do that? Well, it can shoot in 4K, it can shoot in 8K, and when you're shooting in 4K and you press 2x, because it can shoot in 8K, it's basically scaling that down to 4K, so you get lossless 4K 2x zoom, which is pretty cool. The other issue I have with action cameras is that they are just trash in low light settings. You go anywhere with the sun has gone down and all of a sudden your camera is useless. This camera fixes that problem, but it is not all sunshine and rainbows, and there are some reasonably big flaws and issues that I have with this camera as well. So make sure you stay to the end of the video to see what we have to say about those. My name is Kieran, I make tech videos. Please subscribe if you're new. The channel really needs it. We're going to be talking about the price, the specs, the video quality with loads of examples, the audio quality, the good, the bad, and ultimately whether you should spend your hard-earned money on one of these. My hair is an absolute mess at the moment because I'm growing it. So the price, I will always start with those sweet dollar bills. This camera in the UK is £379 or $400 in the US. That's for the camera alone. It comes with lots of different kits like a motorcycle kit or a creator kit, which add price but also add different accessories. In terms of pricing, that puts this pretty much at the top of the range of this kind of camera. It has a large 1/1.3" sensor, so that's actually bigger than the current GoPro, which has a 1/1.9" sensor. It's got a 5nm AI chip which creates this pure video mode, which they say can analyze footage, denoise and improve it. So in terms of real world use, what that means is that the capability in low light is dramatically increased using these AI features. It has a 2.4" flip screen on the back of the camera. It has gesture control, so similar to what we saw on the Insta360 Flow review, where you can start a video just using your hand. And it's got a few other AI features. In terms of looks, on the front of the camera you have the big lens, 1/1.3" sensor. It says Leica on the top because they want you to know it was co-engineered with Leica, as we've seen in every review ever of this camera. It's got a little glass screen on the front and it says Insta360 Ace Pro. On the side of the camera you've got an on and off button, you've got a little hatch here which contains a USB-C port and a micro SD card. On the back you've got that 2.4" touchscreen which does flip up. And I know what you're thinking, in an action camera, is it worth having a touchscreen? Is it going to be durable? This is pretty durable. I've knocked this around a lot, I've dropped it several times, and it seems to be pretty durable. It's also waterproof as well with that flip screen, so pretty happy with that. To lift the touchscreen up, there's two kind of handly things on the side which you press in and then you can flick up that screen. If you flick that down, then on the side of the camera we have got another port which contains the battery, which is removable. On the bottom we've got our magnetic buoy mount, so that will magnetically attach onto here, and that is a pretty sturdy setup. Magnets way more convenient than the screwy things, and also that will not come off. I'm trying to throw that pretty hard and it has not moved. So the most important thing to me is always the video quality. Now here are some examples of footage I've taken with this camera. This is shot in 4K at 30 frames per second. Here are some clips in a cheeky 8K as well. Now, I do have some issues with the focus on this camera, but I will come on to this a bit later in the video when we talk about the bad. For me, audio quality is also really important because although this is an action camera, I will use it for things like vlogging. One of the best things about this kind of camera is that it's just so small that you can slip it into your pocket. But for that, the audio needs to be good. This is an audio test of the Insta360 Ace Pro. There are 3 different audio settings. There's a stereo mode, which is considered the most natural audio recording mode. There's a wind reduction mode, so if you're outside, it'll try and focus on voices if there's a lot of background noise like wind. And then there's a front focus audio mode. I've forgotten the name of it, but it basically will focus the audio recording on what's in front of it. So if I was taking a video like this, then this is what that sounds like. I've changed it to direction focus now. So the audio recording should be focusing on my voice, which is in front of the camera. So I guess if you're shooting in a studio setting where you do want the camera to be listening to me and not what's behind, then this could be helpful. Okay, so now we have the wind reduction on, but hopefully this focuses on my voice a bit more and you can tell the difference. Sometimes wind reduction and noise reduction in post-production can make voices sound unnatural, so that's what I'm hoping that this doesn't do. Okay, so now let's talk about the good. Now, there are loads of good things about this camera. The first thing is this low light mode, so the pure video mode. This is what the Insta360 Ace Pro has fixed. This pure video mode is really, really good. Now, you can't use it in darkness. That's not what this for. It isn't an infrared camera. You do need a little bit of light, but in those low light settings, like you're walking through a city, there's some neon in the corner, there's some street lamps around. The video you get from this, you can actually see what you're trying to video, unlike some of these other cameras, which is just a black hazy mesh. This Insta360 is all about their AI features and the AI noise reduction and you know, video improvement and all of this stuff. AI or not AI, I think that's a bit of a buzzword, but either way, the low light video recording on this camera is really good. The 2x video zoom is also a feature that I didn't know I was missing until now. So similarly to how on the iPhone, you can hit 2x zoom or 3x zoom or even more with optical zoom, here you can effectively do that lossless zoom. They scale back their 8K into 4K. So if you're shooting a 4K video, you can zoom in 2 times, you can get a closer up shot, and it will still be 4K because the camera can shoot 8K. Now 8K is a great feature to have. It's not something I shoot in very often, and that's mainly because the file sizes are so big. And when it's scaled down, and most people are watching YouTube videos or videos generally on their phones, the difference between 8K and 4K, when you actually look at it on a phone, I don't think I can tell that much of a difference. The mounting system on this camera is also definitely a plus. So traditional action cameras like GoPros, for example, you're going to be using these screws. So screw that in, screw that out, and you'll screw it straight onto the camera. This does have a screw, but that's attached to a magnetic mount. And the magnetic mount I can just take off very easily. So that is now unattached. I can put that in my pocket. I can put that in my pocket, I can carry that around. When I want to attach it back to any mounts, I can just magnetically slip it in here, and it's as simple as that. The other thing that's also very easy to use is the different shooting modes. So for someone that is unfamiliar with 4K, 1080p, 30 frames per second, 120 frames per second, you know, I want to go skiing, I want to go vlogging, what camera settings do I actually need for it? You can just press the screen in the corner and there's loads of different preset shooting modes that you can choose from. The gesture control also works great on this camera, so that means you've got the ability to remote start the camera by using certain gestures. There we go, now it's videoing. Let's say I want to stop the video, I can use gesture control as well to end this video recording. Let's say that actually this camera's far from me and I want to take a picture of myself because I'm solo traveling. I can shoot that up with a peace sign, but I don't want the peace sign in, so I'm going to smile. You've also got voice control. So I could say, start recording, and then the recording will start. Speaking about photos, this is probably the best photo taking action camera I've ever used. It takes really clear, crisp, bright colored photos. They are 48 megapixel photos and you can really tell when you look at the quality. The stabilization, as expected for this camera, is really good. There are a few different modes of stabilization. This is what it's like when the stabilization is completely off. So this video is shot with no stabilization at all. This is stabilization in the low mode. There's 3 modes, low, standard and high. This is the lowest level of stabilization. This is now what they would consider standard stabilization. So similar kind of video I've taken with the standard stabilization. And now this is high stabilization. So I'm walking here and you can tell with this video that it kind of looks like I'm floating, looks like I'm carrying a gimbal. And as we would expect with this, because stabilization on action cameras is always pretty good, on this is as good as expected. There's a few different shooting modes that I was also really happy with. So the slow motion mode, this camera can shoot in 4K at 120 frames per second. Time lapses, again, very easy to set up. You don't need to know timings or settings or anything. You can just set an infinite kind of time lapse. Now there's two specific AI things that Insta are really trying to push. So the first one is the AI highlights, where this camera, if you have AI highlights on, will select what it thinks are the best parts of the video. And there's two reasons that might be helpful. One is that it can put those parts together and make you a new video and say, well, these are your highlights. And the second one is that you can select these highlights, make a new video, and then delete the original video. And if you kept on doing that, it would reduce the space that you're using up on your SD card. So if you're traveling for a long time, this would actually be very helpful. For me personally, I found that it was just selecting random parts of my videos to be highlights, not what I would have selected. And I also kind of prefer to see the whole video myself. So this isn't something I can ever see myself really using, but if that is something that would be helpful for you, it does have that. There's another feature called AI Warp as well. There's lots of videos of AI Warp where basically you are giving it a small section of video, about 5 to 15 seconds, and it will create some AI features. It will track something if you want it to track something, and you can tell it to do something or change it to a kind of anime mode or cyberpunk mode, and it will create this little AI video for you. I don't know when I would ever use that, and I don't really know who it's for, but if that is something you like, it's a bit gimmicky, but it is there. Now onto the things I didn't like about the camera. My biggest complaint about this camera was the focus. I would expect with a sensor this big, and also with all of this AI features that it's had, to be able to track my face so well that I'm always in perfect focus and there's a little bit of blur in the background, and I was just hardly ever getting that. I was never really out of focus, but I was kind of just the same focus as the background, which is kind of disappointing because when you're looking at the camera in the viewfinder, it knows where your face is. 100% of the time it's tracked my face. But when I'm looking back at the video, I don't have the complete crisp edges to my face that I would have expected and that I would have wanted. So I was a bit disappointed by that. The video was also sometimes slightly overexposed. So here's an example of that, where I'm shooting in a normal setting. This actually is a light blue sky, but the video makes it look like it's white because it's overexposed. So it was struggling a bit with the lighting in certain settings. This wasn't a problem all of the time. As well as that, when I reviewed the video footage, there was occasionally random flashing on objects or buildings. Now, I originally thought, oh, maybe this is because of the shutter speed because I'm inside, but it was happening outside as well, that there was some random flickering on buildings. So why was it flickering? I don't know. It's not that noticeable, but it's an issue that I just don't know why it was happening. And then finally, when you've got the stabilization on and you've got your flip screen up, so you can set this up like a vlogging camera, sometimes there's a delay between the screen, so what you're seeing in front of you, and this viewfinder. And I found that really distracting. I found out that's because you've got the stabilization on or that it's in a high resolution, but even still there's a noticeable lag between the screen and me, and when you're actually trying to focus on what you're saying, that can be a bit distracting. Here's the verdict. I think there's some things about this camera that completely change the game. Lossless 2x zoom in 4K, big plus. Low light video quality, big plus. Really happy with both of those things. The feel of it, the sturdiness of it, the flip screen, the fact that it can track my face. I love all of those features. I just wish that the video on me focusing was a bit more crisp and that I was focused all of the time, and not just some of the time, and that there was a big differentiation between me, the subject, what I want to be filming, and the background. And that issue itself is a big enough issue to make me question whether it is worth the price tag. Now, I was provided this as a sample unit to try out. Would I spend my money on it? Almost certainly yes, but I do think there are some things that do need improvements with this camera, and I can't wait to see what comes next. Guys, this is a brand new channel. Please subscribe. We have hit 200 subscribers, so that's great news. I was previously on 100, and last month I was on about 50. So great news that we've hit 200. Trying to get to 1,000. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.